Welcome to TradeTheNBI.com. This is John. This reports for the 25th of September, and as we near the end of the month here, we can see that we're still having the same issue. Continuing to drop out the shakeout below the yellow line, though the range of it is narrowed significantly. I mean, we're now talking about 0.5 plus differential before it starts to even out or maybe even turn around. Still haven't dipped below the red line on the ES, even though the NASDAQ has been just a little bit softer than that, but the DOC continues to reset completely here. We're below negative 13.5 with the red. We're reaching that minus 24, which tends to be pivot junction for at least DOC readings. Doesn't mean it's going to be sustained without that orange dip, but it's often where we see a pivot up, and we haven't been into this kind of oversold in quite some time, of course. People are talking about the devastation of the market. Well, all this is just a retrace of August. So August was up, September was just filling it back in place. Pretty much going nowhere. But in effect, every day going quite a bit of somewhere, because we're getting some dramatic ranges, which this was the volatility that I talked about at the start of September that was just going to increase as the election came along, and we're not seeing any deviation from that expectation. So it's played along perfectly as expected. So from a NASDAQ standpoint, you can see it's been stronger from an extreme standpoint. We've been well above the green levels, and that haven't dipped into any of the oversold. And the shakeout hasn't been quite as damning as you see on the S&P. So from that standpoint, the NASDAQ, again, still underperforming, but doing better in that underperformance as far as being able to sustain itself, particularly right here around that 23%. It's also had some better DOC readings, but the problem is when the DOC red is in this no spark zone, which is between that -7 and negative 13.5, doesn't tend to produce much. And again, you'd have to see a dip of orange going down below, and all we're seeing right here is the potential of a cross of steel. It's at 3.96 below the cyan would be a more negative bias, so we'll definitely be watching where that one goes. But of course, it's going to play out intraday earlier, so we'll see it there from a clear standpoint. And this has definitely put a sour note on gold, because nobody is seeing any inflationary pressures. In fact, all the talk is about deflationary pressures given what we've seen. And it was really this lack of being able to get that second stimulus going that everyone really had anticipated and was built into a lot of the August market move that everyone thought a compromise would come through. And it seems like Nancy Pelosi decided that no, we're not doing any deal under any circumstances unless it's everything that she wanted, and it just wasn't going to happen. So deadlock. And that's never happy when a market's factoring in the bonus cash that they thought was really going to sustain buyers and everything going through into the winter. So it'll have to be after the election, if at all. And that obviously depends on what happens there. So from a euro standpoint, again, its weakness is just filling back in a lot of these positive extremes, getting back towards the expected range that's always been in there. And a lot of this is the weakness that's being experienced in Europe, because, again, they're doing a whole lot more testing and finding more cases. That really, the numbers don't suggest that their mortality rate or anything has changed like that. So again, it becomes one of those where are you really so just concerned about the number of positives versus whether it's really impacting the population from a significant health standpoint. So here we have oil. It's just maintaining itself at this particular time. No real significant movement as of yet. It's pretty even as far as its build. I mean, we just broke above the negative 7.5 range with the red at minus 6.53. That should be enough to give it a little push, particularly getting above the 50%. So we'll see if it's able to do that. But again, that comes down to economic activity and whether or not production has been stabilized, or if there's still cheating going on. We see Iran is loading boats with oil and shipping them around, so we'll see if those get confiscated. It's quite an interesting evolution. So we were in the weakness from a 5K standpoint, and then we ended up with a couple of little pops to test back and forth before making a new low. And what they did was, when they tested that, they saw that there was a limited supply going above, and that meant for a decent rally. So you test any new lows coming down lower and produce the new buys, and that just led to a steady up and down. I mean, again, every DOC spread was giving clear indications. Some were stronger than others, like in this particular case, the first one, soft, no magenta cross there, and then boom, much stronger, created a much bigger dip. And as that one stabilized and we got the returns coming back up from a shakeout in that, moved right back up to peaks again, only to produce the first DOC spread right there. Gave us this slight one, and it was a little soft. And then the buy return, and again another DOC spread. This one was a little bit more dramatic. Filling back in positive extremes, the tests below red line. So doing all the work necessary to keep the market looking and functioning from at least an algorithmic standpoint, right in line with what we would look for healthy. So no objection to it. The range is beautiful. We're getting some significant moves. I mean, these are 40, 50 point moves that are just going back and forth and pretty much giving a pretty solid maneuver within it. You don't even have to catch the tops of the bottoms. You can just stay with the bulk of it and then just trade out as it flips. So as always, I will keep updating as necessary and put it on the Skype chat. Trade well. We'll talk again later.